We're here at Black Hat in Las Vegas, and I'm sitting with Joe Stewart, who is the Director of Malware Research at SecureWorks, Dell SecureWorks, I should say. Joe, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Dan.
You've done some research into the APT threat over the last several weeks, I would imagine, and you are looking at APT from the perspective of the attribution from the actors, the folks who are behind it, not necessarily the victims. And you've come up with some interesting findings here that actually may be able to help some organizations deter some of these threats, perhaps. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, so there's two sides to my research. One, I found some network communication traffic that led me to some potential attribution. Not necessarily the who, but at least the where at this point. And then also found a way to write signatures to detect that particular network traffic pattern so that companies that might have a hidden APT Trojan on their network might be able to detect it.
So take me through the process of what you did. This required you to have some samples of some of this stuff first?
Yeah, so actually we have a lot of samples coming in every day from various feeds, but we also need intelligence, so we look out and look at previous APT attacks that have been reported and facts of those. We're able to correlate host names to APT samples and look for the connections and see, what other types of information we can find out about them and how they're all related.
So when we think about APT, we think about really sophisticated, really well-funded, very smart stuff written, but apparently they had a bug in this whole process here where you would get some error messages back.
Right. The thing about APT is it's more about the persistence than it is about the advanced part. A lot of the malware, in fact, is very simple. It doesn't have a lot of sophistication to it. And this tool that they're using in the process of their communications, it's designed to hide the tracks of the real controller of the malware. It's not very sophisticated either. And it also has some debugging error messages that are left in on the code. I don't know if it's on purpose or not, but if somebody doesn't realize that there's this error message and they use the tool and they're not fully familiar with its functionality, what they end up doing is revealing where they're actually trying to hide. They've got a command and control server, they're trying to disguise its true IP, and this error message just gives it right away.
So what does it say? What does it say?
It basically just says, connection to IP address failed. So the IP address that it's telling you failed is actually the hidden location. So what you've got is a bounce between a piece of malware trying to phone home. You've got an intermediary host, which is probably a hacked server in some other country. And then you've got the real location. So that hack server running that bouncer tool is the one where we see the error message, and it tells you where that hidden location of the final destination is.
So now you have your hands on the legitimate IP addresses for the command and control centers, and those point to ISPs, I would imagine.
Right, those point to ISPs, and what we found by surveying a great number of IP addresses that we have known to be associated with APT activity is that even though we might have any number of these IP addresses all over the world, every time we saw this bouncer in use, all of the traffic was destined just for a few ISPs, and they're all located in China.
Mm-hmm. So does that mean the actors are from China?
It's very likely. Of course, anybody can appear to be from anywhere in the world. And usually when we see IP address-based evidence, we take it with a grain of salt. We know that, there's different ways of appearing as you're anywhere. However, with this, I think we've gone one step beyond that because we see that they were deliberately trying to hide the fact that they were in China, but they failed because they didn't fully understand how this tool worked.
Right, so you were able to track them back there. So at the very least, their command and control infrastructure is definitively based in China.
Yes, there's definitely something in China they're trying to hide. Now, it's, it's, again, never 100% certain, but I think we've gone a little bit further than the normal IP attribution.
Now, based on research from some of these APT threats, most recently the RSA SecurID breach, researchers have been able to extrapolate that there are just a couple of teams, or two teams actually, that are mainly involved in this stuff. And did this research kind of confirm that fact?
Yes, this is really just strengthen what we knew about the activity that's been going on for a while. There's certainly maybe more than just two groups, but the bulk of the activity we see around APT seems to be two main actor groups. And that corresponded with the use of this HTRAN tool. Both of these groups use the same bouncer tool, but the final destination of one group is always the Beijing IP addresses, and then the final destination of the other group is always the Shanghai addresses. So
for the ISP.
Yeah, for the ISP. So it's always you know, a separate infrastructure used by both of these groups, and separate malware, and even though they share the same tactics and, you know, tools like this, the activity is largely contained. It appears into two different teams.
Now you did this is great research, and it helped to kind of create a more definitive line of how these attacks are, you know, are originating, and, you know, you're able to trace them back. Knowing that information, what can some organizations do to use this, your research, to help themselves?
Well, first they can use the pattern that we released about how this tool sends its error message. So in some conditions, if they deploy these signatures and they work in any snort compatible IDS, IPS, and watch their network traffic, if they have one of these APT malware families that has been seen using this bouncer tool to hide the tracks and hide the location of the command and control, they might be able to spot an APT infection on their network where otherwise they may have had no clue.
Right. So at the very least, it's possible that this may help. As you told me before we started filming, if you could help one organization, then you've achieved quite a bit.
Then it's all worth it. I mean,
yeah.
So we hope that's what happens.
You're going to continue to monitor this. The assumption would be, though, that the attackers would catch wind of this research and fix this problem.
Right. I mean, that's what we expect. I mean, we've basically revealed a bug in the tool that they're using. We expect that they'll get intelligence about that, change the tool, either patch it or decide to use something different. But it will be interesting to see how long that takes them, and, you know, what the end result is.
Of course, and always good to make the criminals scramble a little bit.
Yeah, it is nice to win one once in a while.
Yeah. Okay, Joe Stewart, Director of Malware Research at Dell SecureWorks. Always appreciate you coming on with us and talking about what you're up to, so thank you.
Thank you very much.